All right, what is up, everybody, and welcome into this week's edition of the South Florida Comedy Calendar. This show that's your one-stop shop for everything South Florida comedy on a week-to-week basis. I am your host, Sebastian Alvarez. I'm a local comedian down here. I also am one of the managers over at the Miami Improv, and I'm joined, as I am every single week, by my co-host, Art Roach. How you doing, Art?
Had a pretty good weekend, Sebastian. My girl Haley Cavender scored 32 points against SMU this weekend, so can't complain. I'm pretty happy.
That's right. Shout out to them Lady Canes. Art is still trying to get free tickets to those games, but by this time next year, I think he's going to have season tickets, actually, to support the team, even though the Cavender twins will have graduated. I believe they're fifth years already. So
I'll follow them wherever they go.
Heard that. Awesome. I believe they do WWE and stuff. I think that might be the next step. So you're a big WWE fan now?
Amen.
Man, that's going to be cool. I can't wait to see you at the events, cheering him on.
Comedy Calendar next year will start supporting the WWE.
WWE will be sponsored by WWE. All right,
Amen.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, guys, I am excited for this week's edition of the South Florida Comedy Calendar for one really, really huge reason, and that is because our guest today is one of my favorite comedians down here in South Florida. I've traveled around the country, very specific part of the country, but I have traveled the country with this guy once or twice, and I want you all in here in the studio audience to give a warm round of applause to the very funny Mark Christopher.
Hey, thank you. Around do we even make it around Ohio? It was around Columbus.
It was just Columbus and Cincinnati.
Around Columbus and Cincinnati together. But thanks for having me here, and thanks for the kind words. Honored to be here. I'm having a rough week. My Lady Mustangs lost to the Canes, so I lost my shirt on that one. I'm guessing that's with SMU's team.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, I pulled that one out. All right, good. That's going back to like Eric Dickerson era
For
knowledge. Real. SMU. Okay. They survived a death penalty and came back, and that still in there. I wonder what space it's taking up. They could have been filled with something more useful.
I will say, I was going to say, SMU did actually, for the first time being in the ACC, make it to the ACC championship game in football this year, which was actually very impressive for a school of that caliber. I was about to say Cavender. You got the Cavender twins on my mind. But, guys, we're going to go through this week in South Florida comedy. Mark's got a few really, really cool spots that neither of me or Art have ever done, so we're going to learn about those and get you guys a little bit more of a robust perspective on what's happening in South Florida comedy. But to start off, I want to recap what was happening last week over at the Miami Improv. I know Art was there hanging out and taking pictures and doing all that stuff. What was happening at the Miami Improv last week, Art?
I had a great time last week. We had Maz Jabroni all week. Dean talked about it in last week's interview. Amazing show. I mean, the guy's a master, an hour of the best material that I've seen probably this year. And on top of that, he had a bunch of guests. He had Tehran Gazri, which is a black, half black, half Persian comedian. His points of views were amazing. I had never seen a comedian like that, so really, really dope. But also, I got to meet Jack Jr., who's just Dean's friend. He talked a lot about him here last week. And the guy really is a stand-up guy. I mean, he welcomed me with a big old hug, and I got to take a picture of him.
I was going to say, he actually has a show this Monday, correct?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, look, when we were there at his show with Maz, they had an influencer. It's called A Pinch of Puga. They had her show up with her friends and do like a review of the show, which was pretty cool. The picture I took of Jack that's on the screen actually shows them, the group of them in the background and stuff. So really, really cool. But yeah, really cool guy, and I'm excited to get out to LA. And he said the same thing that he said to Dean, hey, come out to LA. We got you over there. So we'll see when we get there how that looks.
Sure.
But moving on, Monday.
Give him some time to rebuild, though. Give him a breath, To
rebuild after the fire.
At least.
Well, they've been here the whole time, so I'm guessing that everything.
That should say it all. There's been a lot of LA comics in Miami recently. I don't know. What is that? What started that?
Conspiracy, maybe. I don't know.
It was lasers from space.
It's a LA comedians, Oprah and Bill Gates. I think they're all in on together. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Got you.
But tonight, Monday, 8 p.m. at the Ararat Grill in Sunny Isles. Jack Jr. is actually doing his own show. He'll be headlining there. Dean Gonzalez will be at the show. I'm hoping they have either one of the comedians that was at the Moss show there as well, maybe Tehran. But it's going to be a killer lineup. So I'll be there tonight. I'm going to swing by, say what's up, take some pictures. But it's going to be a good time. And I'm excited to see Jack Jr. doing some stuff down here. And again, when you and I get to L.A., we're definitely going to be hitting them up for some shows. So
yeah, absolutely. Moving on to Tuesday, though, looking forward to this week, we got a room that I recently did for the first time that is a really cool, unique style room, and that's Julian Henry's. That's ran by Lita Faye. you do the set from like the second floor on this like overhang that you're addressing the people that are eating on the first floor, and it gives this like super unique vibe that I've really never experienced in another spot. So if you want to go and like not only get really good food and drinks that they have available there at Julian Henry's, it's known for it's a food like higher end food cafeteria. So there's all these different kiosks, and they're all like privately ran by different chefs and different people that maybe can't afford to have an entire restaurant to themselves, but they still make really good food. They're able to post up there and have little kiosks, and I think it's really cool. Mark, you've actually done the room in the past, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I did it a couple of weeks ago. So the stage is actually a little balcony that's right in front of the elevator column. So it's got kind of like a Mad Max, I'm about to release the water sort of vibe. But if you get people, you get people like paying attention. I was propositioned by the table right below the balcony. Can always be a challenge, like getting people to pay attention there because you're a good 100 yards away from some of the folks, depending on where they are on the food court. But it was surprisingly good. It went pretty well. We had a good time.
Yeah, and I've heard great things from it from Ben, our boy Ben Smith, former guest of the show. I know he's told me he has a kind of in-your-face style, so I know he loves that room to be able to really throw some wild stuff.
Of course, yeah. No, and he's done it a few times already.
And get some photos of you're not going to ever perform at a place that looks like that. I mean, it looks like maybe if you're in the grand ballroom of a certain cruise ship or something like that, but it's just lights all around you. Again, you're like in front of this illuminated elevator column, and then like depending on where the photo's taken, you're just this little ant on the stage. So it's like a fun one to put up there and say like, see if you can find me in this photo.
Yeah, nice. I remember when I was there like performing, I remember thinking to myself like, bro, if this was packed out, if they just had like people everywhere, this would be one of the like craziest layouts I've ever seen. I mean, obviously on a Tuesday, it's tougher to bring out. It would probably take to fill it up almost 200 people to get all the levels filled and all the chairs and all the tables that are there. But the energy there is really, really cool, and I definitely would love to go back and do that room again when the whole table is full, because they have this one long middle table where most of the people are sitting, where you can address. That's kind of like directly adjacent in front of you, and we had like a few people sitting there. But I would love to see that just packed out and what the energy in that room is, because you're right, it is such a unique venue.
Yeah, compared to other things like that, that's a good advantage, because it's not that everybody's going to be clustered at those little kiosks. You do have one long communal table, and if you get people who are there for comedy, you can get like enough of a core audience that maybe you can get somebody's attention and hold it for the entire
Absolutely.
show.
I was able even to do crowd work with somebody at that table when I went up there. So it was nice to just kind of be able to, like, even though you're still far, you can still hear them and interact, which was nice. Moving on to Wednesday, though, we got another leader room that you're going to be doing this week, Mark, for the first time. I was there last week.
Okay.
And
how was it?
I loved it. Bis Gan Brewing is one of the coolest little spots. It's actually, I realized when I got there, it's like across the street from Tipsy Flamingo. So it's right there in that downtown area. It's really cool. It's really nice. You go into this one little entrance in a building. You go up a golden elevator to the third floor. And when you get out.
The elevator.
Yeah, the golden elevator. You get up there and then you get out, and it's just a really nice lounge it has a bar. They have some pool tables and ping pong tables. They have a few different like cool little things you can do, but the stage setup is really nice. There's always a good little crowd of people. So I'm really looking forward to being able to go back and actually do that room. I just went and supported last week, but what did you what do you think about going up there?
Oh, it sounds like Lita's scouting rooms according to the snazziness of their elevators.
That's true.
Which, is as good a criterion as any. I haven't been there before, but now that I know where it is, I've done Tipsy Flamingo, so that's a cool part of town, so it should be a good show. I don't know a lot of the comics on it, Lita, of course, but then Anya Zova, who used to be based down here, who is a former model and kickboxer turned comedian. So she's very cool and very funny. I haven't seen her in a couple of years, so I just checked, and she's going to be on the show, so that should be good. And I've had a couple of good shows in Miami recently. One of them being the food court you just mentioned. So looking forward to this.
Excellent, man. We also on Wednesday, me and Art will not be, unfortunately, at Bis Gan Brewing this Wednesday because we're going to be over at the Miami Improv for our monthly New Faces show, guys. This is going to be the second New Faces within the month of January, so I'm really looking forward to being able to double dip in the same month. We don't usually get to do that at the New Faces, but it's going to be a great show. I know a bunch of the comics that weren't able to make it to that January 7th New Faces. That kind of happened really quick in the year. They weren't able to bring out their people, or just maybe it snuck up on them with the new year and the holidays. So I know a lot of comics that are really preparing to bring out people and bring their best, because this is going to be, for most people on that show, their first time performing on the New Faces this year. So we're going to be there. We're going to be hanging out. We're going to be doing some sets. If you want to come out and enjoy and support any of the comics, remember they all need 10 people to show up to get them on that stage. So definitely come out and support the local scene, support the local comics. And Mark, have you ever done the New Faces?
It's been a while because I've been doing it long enough that it's hard for me to get people to continue to come out and do my shows. But just a word for anybody who thinks they might want to come to see that show, but you don't happen to know a comic, or you don't know a comic who's going to be going up that night. Show up to the Improv, say, hey, who on your list still needs people? And just donate your name to that person's list, and that helps somebody who was maybe counting on friends who bailed on them to be able to get up and perform that night.
Yeah, Comedy Calendar bring you insider tips. Absolutely. Another thing I'll say, especially this year, we're trying to push big on New Faces because we have Dark Vision there filming every single set. And it's $25, which is very affordable, and you get a professional grade video with the Improv in the back, all edited. And we have some additional packages where we'll clip it up for you and do things on Instagram and stuff. But it's a great opportunity. You come in and you can get a really good video out of it, a really good set. The last couple of ones have been 200 people, 250 people at New Faces. Some of the biggest crowds that you get to perform in front of.
Yeah, when you get 200, 250 people at one of these South Florida improv rooms, that's a great tape. If you can deliver on stage, or even deliver halfway on stage, that's a tape that'll get you some work. So,
absolutely. No, 100%. So definitely, guys, remember, New Faces, 8 p.m., doors open at 7, and then you can come out and support any of the local comics. It is a free show as long as you put your name down in support of one of those guys. So definitely come out and support. That's always happening every single month. So if you missed this one, don't worry, we'll keep you posted on when the next one's happening over at the Improv. This weekend, though, over at the Improvs, we have two headliners that are some of my favorite headliners that come through every time, the Miami Improv, but we got one in Miami and one in Dania. Starting in Miami, we got Ari Spears doing 5 shows Thursday through Sunday. Ari Spears is, just one of the funniest comics I think I've ever seen come through the Improv stage. Yeah. He's so loose. He's so in the moment. He has this I don't give a fuck attitude when he's on stage, and I can't get enough of it because he's been doing this for years, decades, really.
Well, and you go back far enough. I rember him from when I was a kid on Mad TV with Bobby Lee and those guys. He also, when he used to do a lot of touring, he came down. He used to be on Big 106 with Paul and Young Ron. He would come by and do the interviews with them. They actually had a beef that exploded one time, a big fight on air. He came back years later, and I found out that those days with Ari Spears, Justin from the Improv was there with him on those days.
Yeah, Justin takes him whenever he'd come down here. Justin, actually one of the managers over at the Improv, he's usually the guy that is always taking any of the headliners through to do their media pushes. So yeah.
So it's such a cool, for me, Miami comedy moment, that thing that happened. I was a kid, it blew up. It was I felt the drama, and then years later to have it be relived from the other side, where he was like, no, it was actually crazier than you thought it was. They actually looked like they were about to fight.
That's cool.
So glad to see that Ari Spears is still touring down here in South Florida. He's killing it. I have a ton of people reaching out about his show, so I know it's going to be a good show.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a great time. If you want to come out and enjoy the shows, guys, just hit us up. We actually are going to be giving away 2 tickets to the 10:30 show right here on the Comedy Calendar page. So if you want to win those tickets, it will also come with a spend at the Miami Improv on your food and drinks that you'll be able to enjoy as well. So definitely use this clip right here, post it on your story, and comment, tag 3 friends that you'd want to take to the Improv with those tickets. We are giving away those tickets for the Ari Spears show Friday, 10:30. Please come out and support. And if you want to win some tickets, definitely repost this. But moving over to the Friday shows through Saturday, at the Dania Beach Improv, it's going to be the man, the myth, the legend, William Montgomery. And guys, if you have not seen William Montgomery when he's come down to South Florida, you got to check out this show. This guy's style is like no other. You've seen him on Kill Tony many times. He's a regular guy on Kill Tony. And what I love about him is that I started seeing William come through. He opened first for Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
I saw him open up for Tony when Tony came as a regular headliner to the Miami Improv maybe 2 years ago. And I hadn't heard about him through Tony, through Kill Tony, or I hadn't heard about him through the online media. So when I saw him there live, it really just blew me away as being like, yo, this guy is different than 99% of the comics that I've seen come through and do this stage, whether it be locals or people coming from out of town that are being brought in by the headliner. He caught my attention right away, and then he came back with Duncan Trussell and just murdered again. And it wasn't on the next time he came through, he wasn't featuring, he was headlining.
Yeah.
So that should just give you guys a testament to just how funny this guy is, and how good he is, and how quick of a meteoric rise he's getting through this game.
And you're describing the last 2 years. In the last year, right? So he came in, he headlined, and then that was one show. Then he came back to Dania. He headlined 2 shows.
Yep.
And now he's coming back. No, sorry, he came back to Miami for 2 shows. Now he's back at Dania 4 shows.
Yes, sir.
So in a matter of a year, it's just doubling. So we're not going to get a lot more of these William Montgomery shows until he's doing arenas. You know, it's
That's
just
true.
going to be.
That's true.
I don't know how many more years.
He's already done arenas. He did MSG with Kill Tony. So like we're already seeing that formula works at scale. So you can only imagine that it's going to be sooner than later before you get to. He's going to have to pay a little extra on the service fees to go get a ticket through Ticketmaster.
Yeah, Ticketmaster's going to get a piece of this.
To go see William Montgomery. So do it while it's still at the Miami Improv, where our taxes and fees are low, guys. Come on. But yeah, that's going to be really fun over at the Dania Beach Improv, guys. I just highly recommend this show. I'm not sure where ticket sales are at. I don't think he's like 100% sold out. You should still be able to get tickets to most of the shows from the weekend, but always make sure, guys, that you're getting them through MiamiImprov.com, and you never have to worry about that. Getting a ticket from the wrong source or not being able to use a ticket. Always go through the websites, whether it be Dania or Miami Beach Improv, and get your tickets there, guys. Moving on to the final show of the week, guys. We have Sunday at 6 p.m., a brand new show brought to you by Cito Comedy. I am super excited for this show because anytime Cito starts a new project or we start partnering with a new spot to put on shows, it always gives me a level of excitement because I know the love and the effort we're going to put into it and what we're going to be able to bring out. And this one is at an absolute establishment in the Grove. We are going to be at Barry's, guys. And if you've never been to Barry's, if you've never had the food there, if you've never enjoyed the ambiance there, the Cito Comedy show on Sunday is the perfect opportunity to go and come out and enjoy Barry's for the first time, because we're going to be there at 6 p.m. Doors are going to be opening around 5:30. You can come in, start ordering food, start ordering drinks, enjoying yourselves, and then watch a really, really fantastic comedy show in a lineup that we've curated through Cito that is second to none. I'm going to have myself hosting that show, and then we have our boy Art Roach here from the Comedy Calendar on as a feature. We also are going to be having Grace Kelly, who is a former guest of this show and one of the better producers down here in South Florida, featuring there, and headlined by the very funny and our good friend Luis Diaz. Man, I am so excited. This lineup is so tight. It's going to be great. We're all looking forward, and we're all really like amped to be able to perform here at Barry's and get this show going. I know Justin over at the Improv, who helps us, who is the overseer, the godfather of Cito Comedy. He's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this, so it's going to be a great show, guys. Definitely come out and support. That is going to be Sunday at 6 p.m. over in the Grove at Barry's. You saw the flyer. It'll also be on Cito's page, so go check that out there and follow Cito Comedy to stay up to date with all the shows.
Yeah, and I'll say big thanks to Justin. This is my first Cito show. We've been trying to line it up for that for a while. But it just happens to work out that it'll be a show that you're going to be on and a show that I'll be on, which is also going to be a rarity going forward. So big shout out to Justin. Definitely come out. It's going to be a 6 p.m. show on a Sunday. Come support. Come show your love. There's no better way to do it than there, you know?
Absolutely. And that early show is nice because then you get to go home early. Yeah.
Are you guys allowed to be on a show together? Isn't that like the president and vice president flying the same plane?
It's
right. It kind of is, to an extent. That's why it doesn't happen that often.
It can't be allowed to happen.
We both have the
I
ingredients
hope
to
you're
coke.
not taking the same car. You're
No.
separate transportation.
No.
I come from the north. He comes from the south.
Building at the same
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay,
I might
not get crazy.
I might be hella padding it. I don't
right.
know, just to keep it safe, just to keep it extra safe.
Right.
No traffic.
And we do have one other show. It's not in South Florida this weekend, but it is going to be in South Carolina, which will be at Valhalla, is the name of the city, South Carolina. And it's the White Collar Comedy Tour, which our good friend Mark Christopher is going to be a part of.
Yes.
Mark, can you give us a little bit of some information? I know it's a Friday and Saturday show up there in South Carolina.
Actually, okay, so Friday we're going to be at Marco Island.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the Performing Arts Center. It's the Arts Center Theater on Collier in Marco Island for 2 shows on Friday. And then the White Collar Tour is going to be in Valhalla, South Carolina at their Performing Arts Center on Saturday. So White Collar Comedy was the brainchild of Vien Pomachan, who's also known as the Comic Doc, who's got a hugely successful dry bar special right now. He's an ENT up in North Florida. So that's the doctor. And then we've got Mike Rivera, who's a teacher, a career teacher, and a member of the Board Teachers Tour. And then I'm famously a lawyer. So it's kind of a play on blue collar comedy, but it's white collar comedy. So everybody's a professional, but also we probably bring about, 45 years of stand-up comedy experience as well to the stage. So we've done some shows at Larry Venturino's room in Estero. We've done the Bonita Springs Community Theater. And so this weekend we actually have a guest. Mike is busy with his school, but we've got Jared Stein, very, very funny guy from Broward and Palm Beach, who's a psychoanalyst. So we've got kind of like 2 doctors, but one of them's kind of fake and bullshit. Yeah. Coming up to, love you, Jared, coming up to perform with us on Marco Island. And then Mike's going to rejoin the tour in Valhalla. So very excited about those. And if this gains some momentum, it's kind of like a very different, we get a different crowd from the comedy clubs. So I love them both, and it's like a little bit of a different challenge, but the crowds we've had have been really, really enthusiastic so far. So we're just trying to build and, start doing more of like the theaters and that sort of thing with white collar comedy. Yeah.
Well, there's an awesome trend there in comedy. We've noticed it. We've talked about it before, where you have like the Board Teachers Tour and these professional kind of congregations that end up happening, and it creates a really special comedy. I mean, I think it lets you go in a little bit deeper. People they know what you kind of expect. Right. It's like you did with blue comedy. With blue collar back in the days. Like nowadays, you kind of know. So the people that are going to be going there, they know the lingo, they know the jargon. They all hate HR. They all have so those those common core things are going to come through it. And as someone who's we're trying to build models to get to clubs, right? So you try to put 2-3 people together that can sell out a club. We love that. I think it's a great, really great to use the professional aspect of it. Really brings that together, and it's working with nurses, working with doctors. I'm glad to see with lawyers.
It's just one of those things. It's just the way the mind works. It's when you say, "Hey, everybody, come out. This show's got something for everybody." That resonates with nobody. If you say, hey, doctors, lawyers, teachers, anybody who works in medicine, education, legal services, come out to this. That tells people, okay, this is something for me specifically. That gets people enthusiastic. So it's where, and all of those people either have people that they hate, right? Or there are enough people who just hate them, who want to go. We're not going to be giving a good spin on any of those professions. Right. So come out and watch us drag our professions through the mud, whatever you.
And this, so it kind of leads into kind of my first question. So we're in the interview portion now of the show.
Oh, okay. Put on my.
No.
Oh, sorry.
This is why I drive the show.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Sebastian. Sorry.
I
had my first question lined up. I was ready.
He doesn't even know.
You're in the chastisement portion of the show, Art.
No, it's not the first time.
The reprimand.
We promise mistakes.
The Star Chamber.
Remember, the show is what's happened, what's happening, and what's coming up in South Florida comedy. So we do have one thing that we have coming up that I wanted to shout out before we get into the interview, and that is Cito Comedy has a new show that we have just booked over at the Wynwood Deck, and that is going to be the best damn game show happening over there. It is going to be on February 23rd. It is also a Sunday, but it is going to be I think the 5th or 6th installation of the best damn game show, guys. It is going to be an absolute riot out there. We do interactive game shows where we bring in the audience and they participate. There are prizes to be had. There is going to be drinks a flowing, and it is going to be a lot of fun. Come and enjoy brunch with Cito Comedy on the 23rd of February for the best damn game show, guys. More to come when we have a little bit more flyer information, and we got a little bit of things. We're going to still have some things in the works that we're prepping for the promotion of the show that we will be debuting here on the comedy calendar as well. But I just want to get you guys up to date now so that you can put it in your calendar and make sure you're free for that.
And if you've been to any of those game shows, just know that they change the games every time. So
True.
If you've been to one, the next one will be completely different.
Yep, 100%.
Mark, go ahead.
And let me just plug Thursday at the Ye Old Falcon Pub. I'm going to be headlining Dan Weiss's new room. Should be a lot of fun. His shows always are. All right, don't want Dan coming after me. I know he's beloved of the Improv.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So
You're absolutely
we don't want to give him any.
He is one of the most consistent guests at the Improv, but he also comes through and always performs on the new faces and all the opportunities that he gets. He's always one of the first people there doing the right stuff. So we always love Dan over at the Improv. Dan's like a mini celebrity at the Improv, really. He pulls up all the security knows him. Like everyone knows Dan when he pulls up to the Improv. So it's always fun. At least Miami.
And shout out Matt Valent, a good friend of ours, good friend of the show, who is going to be performing with you on that show as well. So big shout out.
You go.
Should be
That's
good.
right. Hell yeah. Shout out to Matt Valent. Love that guy. Now we can finally move over to the interview portion of the show. And I've actually been really
Wake up, audience.
Yeah.
Here we go.
No, now I'm really looking forward to this interview, mainly because, Mark, you're somebody that obviously has had such a long and prosperous career in comedy. It's something that, to be honest with you, guys like me in art and the comedians that are currently within like the 1 to 3 year range here in the South Florida comedy scene, look at guys like you and see hope in that. No matter what, even if you have another career, even if you are doing other things in your life, you've still found the time and you've still found the passion to contribute to a comedy career that is very successful, very fruitful. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about what was it, or when was that moment that you decided, hey, I want to do this, maybe not full time, but I want to take this 100% seriously, and I want to dedicate myself to being a good comedian.
So just to bring everybody and maybe you guys up to speed, I was a full-time comic from like 2000 to 2006 when I was working a day job. I didn't do comedy for like 13 years. And then in 2019, I got back into it. So I've been doing it for like a total of 11 years, but over a span of now something like 20, 24, 25 years. So when I first got into it, I had a job. I was working for a company in Silicon Valley called TiVo, the company that invented DVR. And it still kind of afforded me some flexibility. So like even when I first got into it, I would say in the year 2000, I was able to jump in and say, okay, this is really my focus. I didn't have work kind of like pulling me away or like sending me. I would travel for work, but if I traveled, it was usually to New York, and I would try to like leverage that as much as I can and get up in New York. So I didn't have what a lot of people have, which is that like toe in the water kind of thing, feeling it out, and I'm not really sure if I want to do this, and getting up once a week and, getting pulled away by work and having long periods where I wasn't doing it at all. Like during that period from like 2000 to 2006, I jumped right in and I kind of ramped up as quickly as I could and was getting out pretty much every night. Then, of course, I had the period where I wasn't on stage at all. But since I've been back in 2019, it's kind of been the same thing. I've been a practicing lawyer, but I've also, I haven't been reporting to an office. I've been working from home, and it gets busy sometimes. But I've thought of myself more as a full-time comedian, part-time attorney. So I've been very fortunate. Like when I've been doing comedy, if anybody has asked, like, what is your real job? I would say comedy is my real job, and this other thing, which might sound like it's far more real. I'm not, working in the industries where creatives sometimes work in order just to make ends meet, food services, whatever it happens to be. But, I've been able to kind of like compartmentalize those things and, dedicate 30 hours. Sometimes I need to do more. Sometimes I need to travel. But like they've never really like forced me to put comedy on the back burner. So I've been lucky in that regard.
Nice.
And let me ask you, how bad are you at practicing law that you can do comedy and not have it affect your career at all?
I mean, I'd use my real name. If I were better at law, I'd be, I wouldn't be Mark Christopher. I know. I mean, I'm all right. No, I was part of a big case, and we won it. And my clients are all very happy, and they like me. And some of them might recognize my voice if they dip into the comedy world. And they're like, "Oh my God, that's my lawyer." But we try not to make that happen. So I'm not I'm not great, you know. No, I might still need that income source.
Yeah,
so,
of course he's not.
Please,
Mark, of course you're not a great lawyer because you have a soul. You clearly have a soul, and you're an artistic guy. You're not a soulless succubus that is just trying to strain people of their money.
I'm good enough at the law that that I walk away from that relationship. It hasn't told me not to come back. So that's yeah.
To be fair,
I still get the midnight call from the law, you know, from time to time. It's like, hey, hey, Poppy, I miss you. yeah.
Well, to be fair,
I couldn't have been that bad.
You up?
The
Right.
only point of reference I have is Better Call Saul. So that's
Right.
So you,
I get that call at 12:02. Law has made one or two other phone calls before it gets to me. But yeah, I'm in the regular rotation.
So since you've been doing stand-up and since you've kind of dedicated yourself after that 11 years, has it always been down here in South Florida, or have you located for like an extended period of time in other spots?
So I started comedy in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and that was from like 2000 to 2006. So I performed a lot at like the Punchline and Cobb's. All credit to Molly Schmink, who is the reason I was able to work with a lot of the people I was able to work with in that first phase of my career. I like most of my best credits, if I say who I've worked with. It's unfortunately comics who have passed on, but like Robert Schimmel.
Oh, wow.
I got to work a couple of times with Mitch Hedberg, which was fantastic. One of my personal heroes, Emo Phillips, but again, Molly made that happen. The San Jose Improv, which is a beautiful, beautiful room, is the first improv I worked at. So yeah, the Bay Area had at that time and before me, and continues to this day to have a great comedy scene. I just got to perform. I was back in California working at a club called Rooster Teeth Feathers in Sunnyvale, and they had a roast battle on Sunday night, which I wasn't participating in, so I got to go down and do the Sunday showcase at the Punchline.
Nice.
Hadn't been on stage there in 18 years.
Wow.
But it's one of those iconic backdrops in comedy. You've got the Comedy Cellar that everybody recognizes with the little faux stained glass thing in the brick wall right here, but then that backdrop of San Francisco that you get at the San Francisco Punchline is just fantastic to be back there. But that was where I started, and then since I've been back in 2019, it's been South Florida. So I have like two kind of 5+ year phases of my career in those two different locations that are like
cool.
It's bizarre to think that this second phase is now been going on as long as that first phase. You know how that works with life.
So when you compare those two experiences, those two phases, what are the main takeaways that you get from the differences between South Florida, maybe not specifically Miami or anything, but South Florida and let's say like Northern California, that like San Francisco, San Jose area kind of?
Yeah. I mean, I started doing it there, and so I think that's kind of like the crowd that I've always been writing to is kind of that like that coastal metropolis kind of crowd. And so I carry that with me even when like I'm writing now. I'm not necessarily writing to say, okay, well, this is going to play in front of the crowd that I'm going to perform to tonight in, Boynton Beach or Pompano or Miami. I'm kind of like writing to, I think, where do I want this to be? If it's a Netflix special or if it's going to be like at a club in New York or LA or something like that. So I think that's kind of had an influence that I've just carried with me to this new place. That said, I mean, I think the differences that people talk about between audiences in different places are vastly overblown. And if you find that you're getting a completely different response in Naples, Florida from Los Angeles, you're probably like pandering to one of those audiences. And and that's why they just don't buy it when you go to the other location.
One of the things I was going to say, I admire a lot like what I call mechanics, which are people that are joke writers. They start and set a punchline and they just go through it. One of the things I love about watching your sets, I think we were performing a couple of days ago somewhere, and it just cracked me up, even though I had heard the joke before. It's just because it's such a good no fat joke. It's just you set it up and you punch it and you get the audience every time with it. And there's no pandering, right? It makes sense with what you just said. Like, I'm writing it for this audience, this metropolitan audience. You're writing it for this general audience that it hits. I mean, it works. 80% of the crowd's going to get on it, whether you're here, whether you're in Boynton Beach, whether you're in LA, wherever it's going to be. And I'll give you credit for that, because that's something I'm working on myself, the mechanics, just getting better at joke writing. And you just hit, I've seen you do 15 minutes with nothing but jokes, back to back to back. And that's very admirable.
My ideal performance is to just go in there and do exactly what I want to do, and just not like have to react in any way to the deviate from what I intend to do to accommodate the audience. I mean, I think there's a guy, I think his name, is it Dave Rubin? He's like that music guru that's been around forever.
Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin.
Yeah, Dave Rubin's a political commentator.
Okay. Yes. Rick Rubin. I don't want to confuse the two, but he's like a benevolent little gnomish guy who's got like a bald head and kind of wild hair. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen his feet, but I can't imagine him wearing anything but flip-flops.
Yeah.
But he's not a musician, but he consults with musicians. But one thing he said on an interview, he's like, the audience comes last, and that's kind of, it's very, very hard to get comedians to kind of sign on to that, which is like, I'll know it's funny when I hear whether they laugh. It's like, no, you'll know whether you can do it for money at somebody's club when you hear when the audience laughs, but you'd better know it's funny before they laugh, or you're just going to wind up with a bunch of oatmeal that happen to stick to the wall. And what happens when you go in front of an audience that doesn't laugh because you're in the UK, or because you're just, you're
culturally different.
You're 2 counties away and is culturally different. Like, can you actually stand behind that joke and say, it's funny because,
it stands on its own
it's
feet.
put together this way and there's a twist in there, and it's like, you might not like it, but I'm here to tell you what's funny. Right. You tell me which of the things that are funny I can do here for money.
That makes me curious. So how do you think that relates compared to like a jury? Like, do you see any analogies there? Like, where, I mean, are you kind of lawyer that does?
I just tell all my clients when they walk into the room, it's like, you might wind up in prison, but I will be right. You'll have the confidence of knowing that your lawyer made the correct arguments. Well, no, I'm not a trial attorney.
Okay,
but it's a good point.
Well, I asked that because I come from a sales background. Like Sebi has more of a theater background, and even though we get to the same places sometimes, the way we got there is very different, and I think about that a lot. So, coming from a sales background, maybe the audience is like the customer, and the customer is always right. So I tend to do a little too much pandering when I shouldn't. For example, where maybe as like an attorney, you're like, no, the facts matter, and I'm going to get these facts to you, and at the end, you're going to agree with me because I'm right. So that's kind of where I was thinking about.
I mean, there's a saying in the law, in like among trial attorneys, it's like, when the law is on your side, pound the law. When the facts are on your side, pound the facts. When the facts and the law are against you, pound the table. Which is just to say, do what you have to do to be effective for your client. And it's very much a sales thing. And that's why, like, a society has to have rules that govern the behavior of attorneys, because you can't have a functioning society and then just have an attorney manufacturing evidence or just like lying before the court. But all the incentives are lined up to have them do that, which is why the laws have to be in place, right? You want to have a very vigorous defense if you're a criminal attorney, or just if you're paying, to have somebody represent your business interests. Yeah, just go get the result that I want. But I mean, this is where we get into the conversation of it, like, is comedy a business, or is it an art form? And to the extent that it's an art form, you need to, you need to develop.
If you want to make money.
You need to develop your theory, though, of what's funny and why you do this. I mean, if you got into comedy because you thought it was the easiest way for you to make it was like, wow, okay, you've gone through life really trying hard not to develop any marketable skills if comedy winds up being like the best way to make money.
I had another question relating to kind of like the two groups, the when you were in the first 5 years and these 5 years. and it's around like kind of social media, because it's something that we often think about. We're obviously on a social media platform right now. We're trying to push ourselves and get known on social media. What are your thoughts on that? Like how it was back then, how it is today, and maybe what you're trying to do around content and those things?
Yeah. I remember a couple of years in, there was a San Francisco comic who was like the first comic that I knew of who like really started to put his stuff on YouTube and leverage YouTube. And I was like, whoa, okay. And it's like, who is this guy? You know, he's really ahead of the curve. And at the time, I don't know if this is really how he gained his fame, but I don't know that it's not true. But like Dane Cook really is the first guy to become a major touring national headliner through, I believe it was MySpace at the time.
No, that's 100%. That's the true story. He had one of the biggest pages on MySpace, period. Like, there was like 7 or 8 people that had over 1 million followers, whatever they friends, whatever they called it back then. But like, he was one of those original people that went just viral on a social media, which was unheard of.
So the template that's now being followed, and I'm not going to say it hasn't been modified, but like that basic thing, which is you become a headliner by developing a social media following, and then you go to the club that you want to pull it and say, I can put a flyer for this show and just do a live message to my fans, and just those people are going to specifically come to see me at they're going to fill your room that night. That's a I think he's a Gen Xer. He's my age, right? That's Dane Cook did that. So whatever you think of him, he kind of like laid the groundwork for this. I'd like to, if I could wake up and just like write jokes and work on my act. I mean, I never enjoyed having to, back in the day, it was like send a VHS tape out to like some club, go to the post office and send that to some club. And, you know, at least you can figure out if your YouTube video has been watched. But like, I've got tapes floating around from like 2000. Yeah, please don't find them. Make no effort to find them. So, yeah, I didn't like having to spend time doing that. I don't like having to spend time, on social media. But, like, you find that you start liking stuff more and more as you become a little bit better at it. So now that I think I'm, like, at the 99th percentile of people my age in, like, being able to cut up Instagram clips. So as much as I'd like to not have to do that anymore,
I was going to say, your clips look nice. You know what I mean? Even you're probably among the 95 percentile of comics in general down here in South Florida, any age group that are posting clips, because you're not only consistently posting clips, but you're consistently posting quality clips, which is what I wanted to get at next, which was, what is your writing process like? Because I see you always coming out with new material. You always have well-written material. I'm assuming, it's something that you have a consistent way of getting to that. There's no way that just comes out of the ether. So what is your writing process per se? And how are you constantly able to just burn this material and put out new stuff?
Everything I write is, people say, oh, do you have all your stuff written out? That's the first question people usually ask. And yeah, absolutely. I have just a very sprawling, poorly organized Word file on my laptop that I think has just crossed 500 pages, where it's literally blue highlight title of a joke, and then the word-for-word text of that joke with parentheticals and like stage directions, if it's like, looking aside, blah, blah, blah. So that is what I consider to be like the product that I'm looking for when I sit down to write. What I will usually do, everything's going to come out of if I think of some little twist, that's like a little wordplay twist or just a little scenario, I'll write that out, and it's like, okay, so what's the backdrop that is going to like really make this stand out and is going to, one, create misdirection so the audience thinks I'm going somewhere else, but also be clear enough so that when I arrive at the destination, everything makes sense as to how we got there. Yeah. Like they realize, oh, this couldn't have gone any other way, even though I didn't know where we were going. So just like an example, because that's all fairly abstract. Like 2 years ago, I went to see a show that Nick Masick was producing at the Tin Roof. It was right before Halloween, and there was like a broom that was a Halloween like decoration that was just above the bar. And I just looked at it, and it's like I was just staring at it. I'm like, there is something there. And I was like, okay, the whole witch broom connection is just so strange. And then the Halloween connection. And then, like, the broom, it has all sorts of other uses. So I'm like, I just stared at it for a second. And then, like, the first thing I came up with was like, okay, witches ride brooms. Brooms are a cleaning implement. These days, though, you might use a Roomba. So I'm like, okay, witches riding Roombas. There's something kind of funny there. And then I was like, all right, what would be this? I was like, oh, my neighborhood's so rich, the witches ride Roombas. Okay. That one's never actually made it out of the note, but it's in there. It was like the first thing. So I sat there and thinking, and then that was like the kernel of the witches joke that I do all the time, which is like I do this thing about Halloween and Halloween costumes, and I say like, my little niece goes to a school and they're not allowed to wear offensive costumes. You can't be a devil, scares the younger kids. Can't be a priest, scares the older kids. And at that point, that usually gets a really big pop. And that's the other thing, like when you get a big pop halfway through the joke, people think, oh, that was the whole thing.
Right.
And so now you've done all this setting up, but also their guard's completely down. And then it's like the one that gets me is no witches. Like apparently witches freak out the rich kids. Well, they've never seen a white woman use a broom. Yeah. And so then that gets the huge laugh and moan, and it's like, oh, okay, we thought we'd already heard the joke with the priest thing, but that's how it came about. It was just that little kind of like, I know there's something weird there. The whole witches and brooms and the multi-use of that item, and it's got like,
it's like you're pulling at a thread of funny.
Yeah, and it's just anything that's got like different purposes depending on the context. Like another one of the jaw cramp joke,
and that's my favorite joke.
A lot of people, so a lot of people will say like, all right, here's an idea. Stop me because I'm just going to go on here. I'll just I'll be quiet for hours, and then like you start talking about jokes, and I'm just going. But a lot of like joke writing classes, they'll say, all right, well, if you want to write about this topic, just do a brainstorm, a brain dump, and write everything that's associated with it, and then just start to look for connections between those things. And like you can the jaw cramp joke is I used to get terrible cramps in my jaw from cocaine until I figured out that you can just buy it with money. But like so. Right, it always works. But if you just put like cocaine down in the top of a page of blank page of paper, and then you're like, okay, well, what? Crack, blowjobs, expensive. You will come up with those connections, and then you just like. And then the jaw cramp thing is like, okay, well, you get a jaw cramp from like everybody who's done coke knows you get that kind of thing. Yeah. But
there's other things.
Everyone who's ever given a blowjob, I imagine, has probably had that. So it's like you connect those two things, and then it's like it seems like the joke writes itself. But if you set it up correctly, no one's thinking blowjob when I say I used to get cramps in my jaw from. You do the motion that every crypto bro, he's snorting coke off his hood of his Lambo is familiar with.
What I love, that joke is so good. And the last time you told it a couple of days ago, last time when I was there, and you told like someone literally got up from the audience, walked over to the stage, and gave him a fist bump.
The favorite, like when you get a whole room laughing, there's like a beat. And then the laugh, and then some people just are going, "Oh my God, oh my!" And they're like, "Okay." Some of these people are like shocked and horrified. Some of them are loud. That's perfect. Perfect little mix.
The thing was that like Mark just didn't get the exchange. He was trying to give him a baggie. Yeah. Mark just gave him a fist bump. And Mark, you have to open your hand. That's what that guy was offering you.
So I mean, whenever I'm writing, it's always that, and I never assume that if something gets a little bit of a pop that it can't be better. Like if somebody comes up to you, and it's hard to, I'm not talking about the guy who says, I have a joke that you should do afterwards, and then tells you a street joke. But if a comic says like, hey, I've got a tag that I think might, give another layer or another level or just extend a joke of yours. I hear a lot of comics say that joke already works. Like, fuck yourself. It's like it doesn't. Does it work as well as Bill Burr's best joke or Sarah Silverman's best joke or whatever you want to be as a comic? That is it at that level? Then then listen and figure like maybe there's another tag there. There's another place to take that. So I'm always I think Woody Allen said like the way he writes is like he puts himself in a crazy situation and then says, what next? What else? What else? Can there be anything else? And just, it's that. So I'm just, I write until it gets stupid or until it just like, it obviously doesn't work or until the thing I've written just undoes the thing that came before.
So sorry to jump in here, but
good.
So obviously you're a mechanic. The jokes are coming out so dope, and the obviously you have your unique writing style. It translates. I mean, you're going to be in South Carolina this weekend. You're traveling a lot for this. Obviously, you come from a traveling background, but do you have like an agent or a manager? Do you have anyone that's kind of helping you, let's say clerically around some of this comedy stuff?
Not really. I mean, I know a couple of comics who, from back in the olden times who never stopped doing it and were friends of mine. And so like, Robert Mack, who's a hilarious comic, has a couple of dry bar specials. He produces some shows and has had me come feature for him at a couple of things. I know like, Gary Cannon, who's kind of like the house MC at the Melrose Improv, is an old friend of mine, has hooked me up with some stuff and various, I can't go into, all the names. So I'm just going to say, just be offended if I don't plug you here, but I don't have a manager or an agent or something like that. I wasn't super young when I started comedy way back in the day. And so I didn't, I got to a level where I was like, featuring at good clubs and stuff like that. But I've, never been a guy who you would obviously look at it and say, that guy's going to be the next thing. I'm a wordsmith and joke writer. I get up there, I look at tapes that I've done, like just try to find one where I'm smiling. It's like, God damn, dude, do I even have teeth? I've got this like glum, unapproachable look on my face. I'm looking at the camera now to remind myself to like, seem halfway pleasant. But I just get up there and tell jokes. So, I've never been that, that obviously marketable guy. And yeah,
I am going to create a bounty program, cash bounty program for any of these old tapes that any of our guests.
Oh, good God.
If anybody out there has any tapes from any of our guests, future, present, or past, please send them in. We're going to have a good time.
Go in chronological order, please. Yes.
Yeah.
But the reason I asked about the magic is because obviously, I see we've talked a little bit before the show. You're looking forward. You're looking out towards the U.S. What are some of your thoughts as far as like going on tour, or I mean, you have the White Collar tour.
Yeah.
What are some other thoughts around that? Like, what do you to get out there?
I mean, I would love to be on TV and movies. That all looks like a tremendous amount of fun. But like my comedy goal is to, be able to go to A rooms. I'd love to perform like at the Improvs, the Punchlines, the Helium Clubs, like that sort of thing, and just rock those rooms and always have my fans come out, when I'm coming through like 2 or 3 times a year. That's what I'd really love. And I mean, not just in the States. I mean, any English speaking country. I mean, I'd love to go over to, the UK it's so weird that like comedy doesn't travel as much as other art forms do. You'd like never people go to see bands and only realize like during the breaks between songs when they're like, oh, thank you for coming. It's like, oh, these guys are from the UK. I didn't even realize that. But like comedy doesn't come over. A few exceptions, Jim Jeffries and people like that come over from from Australia. But there are huge comedy communities and huge comedy fan bases in in the UK and Australia and every English-speaking country. I'm open to go anywhere, and I've got enough flexibility, and I can do my work from anywhere. If somebody calls me tomorrow and says, hey, I'm headlining Acme in Minneapolis, and my feature dropped out. I heard you were funny. I'm like, yeah, I'll be there.
Have you performed internationally anywhere yet?
I have performed. I headlined an Australian bar in Budapest a couple of years ago. I'm trying to think if I don't think I've ever. I was in Dublin, and I was trying to go around to get my foot in the door at some places there, but all the bars had reopened after COVID, but the comedy had not. And a lot of the comedy was like the upstairs of a bar, and they're like, we've just gotten it to where we've figured out how to get people in the door, and they had to check temperature, vaccination status, basically when you walked in the door before they could let you sit down. And like, we haven't figured out how to do that with the comedy yet, and we're going to do it and blah blah blah. But I was only there for like a few days, so that didn't happen. So I think Hungary is the only.
Well, if you Fringe, the Fringe in Scotland,
I'd love to do
in Edinburgh, that's one that I was there in July, a year before it started, and just seeing them get everything ready like got me excited. I got to perform a little bit of comedy there, like pre-Fringe stuff, but that's one that I definitely want to go back to. A little expensive, but definitely worth, because you'll get a whole. As long as you're there, you'll have 3-4 rooms a night. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people who have done something like, sounds like what you might have done, where it's like a showcase, and a couple of people pitch in, and they'll have a room, and they'll put up, and some people come into town, and they'll hey, pitch in for, it's sort of like what the open mic scene is in New York. It's like there's a restaurant that has a basement that they don't use, so at 4:00 in the afternoon, 15 comics basically rent it for an hour. And, it's like a love hotel, or or a small theater in Edinburgh.
So kind of wrapping up the interview, Mark, I wanted to get your advice or your perspective on what would you tell young comics that are either had just started within the last year, kind of doing the open mic scene, maybe don't have haven't found the path to committing to this full time. What advice would you have for them as somebody who has been doing this, not just in tandem with your career, but as the full main passion in your life for almost 11 years?
So develop it's like very similar to working out, or think of anything where you have made progress, whether it's professionally in terms of your health, your fitness, anything that you've ever gotten good at, playing a musical instrument. There was probably a time where you kind of just like diddled around and thought you were doing it, and then only when you acquired some certain amount of discipline to practice your scales every day, or to get to the gym even if you had to work an hour late. The gym was going to be your priority, and that like next episode of Severance can wait until you really had freedom. Just give comedy enough of a chance to apply that kind of discipline to like your writing, to reaching out to bookers, to developing your social media. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself, it's no matter what you do, it's going to be frustrating, and there's going to be a lot of resistance. At least be able to look back and tell yourself, oh, I made it from here to here as a comic. I got to the point where I was getting paid gigs, or I got to the point where I had a rock solid 15 that I would go and do in front of anybody with confidence. Because if you find yourself a couple of years down the road and you're still in that like noodling around on the guitar, but you can't really even play a song thing, it's going to be, the resistance you meet is going to seem that much more overwhelming, and it's going to be that much more disheartening. The other thing is just be cool to people. There are people who are below you who are going to be above you at some point. There are people that you think of as gods whose accomplishments look very, very attainable and will look very attainable very quickly if you kind of like persevere. So be cool to people, and you'll be very, very happy it's just going to be a more pleasant ride, and you'll be very, very happy, just even in terms of networking, that everybody remembers you fondly, or at least remembers you as someone who was pleasant to work with when you were starting out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll jump on that just to say you're saying those things, but it's definitely very true of the way you act and carry yourself, because every showrunner in Miami books you. Every showrunner speaks very well of you. When I'm on a call, or I'm on a show with someone, and they're like, "Hey, Mark's coming," it's like everyone in the room is like, "Yeah," there's like so every comedian likes you. That's hard to come by, because a lot of people are fake, and you're not. You bust our balls, you give us a hard time, but you also come in, you give us some advice or a tag on a joke, so it shows that you care. So I appreciate you a lot. Thank you so much for being a part of this community, and I'm glad to get to know a little bit more about you on today's show.
Very kind words. I probably wasn't always that way, but yeah, no, thank you. That's good to hear. I like to hear that. Thank you guys for having me. I didn't. I'm a little late to the podcast game, so thank you guys for listening, if any of you are, and hope to be back.
Absolutely, Mark. You are 100% always welcome to come on the show, especially if you have a production that you're putting together or something that you want to promote Biggs in any which way. If you can't get you in studio, we'll 100% be shouting it out on the show, because you are forever one of the special guests that was on the comedy calendar. So by all means, we will be a vessel for you to promote all your stuff moving forward.
Rock and roll.
Yeah,
Mark
man.
C. Ha Ha on Instagram and TikTok.
There you go. You're on TikTok too?
I've got 600. I'm just below 6,000 followers on Insta, and just below 700 on TikTok.
There we go. So help Mark Christopher get to both of those goals on his social media, guys.
Let's get over those hurdles.
Exactly. Before he has to come back here next time on the show, guys. But this has been one of my favorite episodes so far that we've done of Comedy Calendar, guys. You got a lot of great insight from Mark on what a long and very productive comedy career looks like. And for any of you guys out there that are looking to do this full time, I think Mark's interview is going to be a perfect
cautionary
test
tale
for yourself. Cautionary tale. That's right. But you know what? A cautionary tale with a happy ending and more to be written as well. So I'm really glad that we were able to do this week, guys. Until next week, I remember, stay laughing, stay tuned.